Hey guys, this is your girl Paula, the queen from Queens. These are money minutes that matter. I'm gonna tell you guys my secret. These are my powerhouses. These are two of my very best friends. I've known Michelle since she was in middle school and I was in high school because she was the youngest of the crew. And I've known Brooklyn, aka Lisa,
all day.
since April of 1984. I was actually engaged to her brother, so I'm glad I got rid of him and I kept her.
The cool one.
So I want you guys to see what my friends and I believe to be the pathway to success. Success is individual, but because I've known these ladies more than half my life, because I love them and I trust them, I want you guys to take a sneak peek into what we talk about when we're together. Hey ladies.
Hey Paula. Thanks for having us here. This is great.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just glad that you guys came here for the weekend.
Of course.
Always support.
Yes.
Always. So Brooklyn, talk to us about you. Who are you these days?
Well, I did grow up in Brooklyn, and that was a wonderful experience because I got a chance to grow up actually in the projects, and I grew up in the Red Hook projects, and that to me was such an eye-opener. Again, like you have said in the past, you didn't know that you were poor. We had so much fun growing up. There was no way in the world that I was poor. All I knew is that there was a sense of community, a sense of love, and a sense of togetherness. Because if my brothers, not me, because I was always good, so when our brothers would do something wrong, then absolutely Miss Booker would be the one to discipline them. And that was the lady who lived on the 6th floor. But to me, it was so much comfort and joy that I had a fantastic time. I didn't know I was poor until after I went into, I got a little older and I started stretching out into the world. And that's when I realized that people own homes, they have cars, they have different assets that I had no idea about.
And you know, it's so funny because even with you, Michelle, your parent, like my parents, migrated from the South. So that's what we knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny that she said she didn't know she was poor until she started getting out in the world. I actually didn't know I was poor until I decided I was going to college. And I went to college in Rhode Island because I had to, I could not, I knew I couldn't be successful going to college and staying home and commuting like you ladies did. There was no way for me to be in my home and be able to do work. So I went away to Rhode Island, 4 hours away, and I packed a garbage bag.
Wow.
The project garbage bag, full of clothes, a set of sheets, and I dragged the bag to the Long Island Railroad, right there, past the projects.
Right.
Got on the train, on the Amtrak, got to Rhode Island, got on the you would call the bus to come get you, the school bus that I went to. Yeah. And I got to my school, my dorm, and I was the only one there without a family. Not only without a family, but I had a garbage bag full of clothes. I didn't even know what a suitcase was. Like, I didn't know what a suitcase was. Because when I would go places, I'd put stuff in a plastic bag, you know, the shopping bag from the store. So I was like, oh. Still didn't realize I was poor at that point, but I was like,
this is different from them.
This is not.
But you know, it's funny because being a few years older than you, I didn't go away to college because I knew that no one would even give me $50 a month. And I knew that I couldn't afford to be away because, first of all, how would I get the bus to somewhere? And what was I going to eat? And then my dad had never gone to school. My dad grew up in the South and he was a sharecropper, so he never even went to school. So who was going to give me money?
Who knew? I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I just knew that I needed to go away.
Yeah.
Right.
I had two part-time jobs at school. I was going full time, and at the time, I have a younger brother, And, there's a lot of stuff going on in the projects. So I had to work 2 jobs because I was sending him money home.
Wow.
Because I didn't want him to get into any trouble. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I would send money to my friend to give to him because I couldn't send the money to my house because it would have gotten taken by my mother.
Right.
So to make sure that he ate and make sure that he could get a little pair of sneakers here and there, and hopefully that would satisfy him. So,
and it's funny because I don't know who motivated you to go to college. I mean, I know we were there because we were older. Well, we were all in community college back then. So, I mean, what was the family support like for you guys when you went to college? Because my family wanted me to go because they knew I was smart, but there was no pathway design for me to get there.
Yeah, well, for me, I knew from an early age that the only way for me to get out of the situation I was in was to go to college. I knew education was it.
Right.
I don't know how I knew it.
Right.
Maybe it was a teacher at my school who helped me. But I always knew that I needed education because I wasn't
improvement. Right.
I wasn't going to be hanging out with no drug dealer. Nope. I'm not whatever the girls do. I'm not doing any of that. And it's very interesting. I used to have this friend who lived 1 floor above me. His name was David. And when I was little, a tiny thing, he used to go with me to walk my dog. And he said we would walk around. And when I had come back to where I lived, I would go back because my mother still lived there. And he saw me one day. I had my daughter already. He said, "You remember when you were little, we used to walk the dog and you said you getting out of here?" I said, "No, I don't remember." He said, I remember you used to say, "David, I'm getting out of here." And maybe I was in the 5th grade. 6th grade.
So you already had in your mind that there was something that needed to change for you.
Yeah, because you can't, we don't realize it, but we lived in a state of constant trauma. Right? And you don't know that you're living in a state of constant trauma. I didn't realize that till we all got locked up for the pandemic. And I was like, I have lived my life in a state of trauma, from family trauma to neighborhood trauma to the trauma of society where we always have to be on guard.
Different types of trauma.
All the time. And so I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. But
no, and it's real, right? See, because when people look at us, they see success, right? And whatever success means, the success means I have to have $1 million in my bank account. Does success mean I have to have my own fancy car, fancy house? It doesn't. It just means that we were on a road to somewhere, right? And it's interesting because you, although you're a year younger than me, you were doing so many things that I didn't even fathom. Like when you would travel with your aunt and uncle to go upstate to New York.
Right. So that was interesting because that started earlier in life as well. My aunt and uncle, Uncle Alan and Aunt Margaret, they had their own house. And we lived in the projects. They had their own house. They had their own car. They were both working individuals. And they were God-fearing people. So I was like, wow, this is nice. And I remember in the summertime, they actually had a trailer upstate New York. And we would go in the summer on the weekends, and we were in a trailer, and I was like, wow.
Oh, your family had a vacation. Yeah, I was real.
No. That was them. But I was so glad that they gave me that opportunity to see something outside of the city, because I got a chance to walk around and understand birds and trees and all of this stuff, which I would not have had the experience of just staying locally in Brooklyn.
In the concrete jungle.
Yeah, right, the concrete jungle. So having that opportunity, that opened my eyes. And then my dad was big time into traveling. So he was like, whatever you do, you need to travel. And I'm like, Dad, I'm not going to travel anywhere. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? That doesn't make any sense. But he already had a sense of there's something better. And I just know that growing up in the different neighborhoods that we did grow up in, and I got a chance to see so much negativity, and I often wondered why people did what they did. So I actually wanted to study criminal psychology in college. So I had the opportunity to go to LIU, which I loved. And I lived on campus, and that was really nice. That was an eye-opener, but I had to do everything myself, living on campus. And even though I did stay in Brooklyn, I was just a train ride away, that experience in itself helped me and propelled me to grow and do better things. So from that's just, and I think it's just the opportunities. And if you meet people that are doing different things, you gotta listen to them and follow what they're saying.
But you know what, that gets back to role models, right? Because even growing up, you know, and the thing is, I was smart. I taught myself how to read when I was 4 because I had an older sister, and when she brought her books home, I would read her books. So I taught myself how to read. So people in my community, and you lived a couple blocks away, but I always had a book in my hand. I would walk the streets of New York with the book. Like, oh, here comes Paula.
Do you remember that you gave me one of my first books, The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I was a tiny thing when you gave that to me, but I could not put that book down.
Wow.
It was freshman year in college. When I was in college, and you were probably in ninth grade.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I didn't understand that book.
You didn't?
No. I'm thinking, because I was so practical. Because when you live within a racist society, and you live within where you're all black and everybody looks like you, I can't imagine, how can a person be invisible? How can you not be seen in society?
That book, I got it all. I was like, this is ink. I still have the original book you gave me. I still have it.
Put an age on the book.
I was like, this book is, and I've read it more than once. I've read it several times.
Did you introduce that to your kids? Did you tell them about the book? Okay.
No. My daughter has read it.
Okay.
And my son. Both my daughter's in law school. My son's a professional soccer player. Both of them. And they are grounded in their giving, because I didn't even know what volunteering was growing up. I'm thinking, why would I volunteer and I can work and make some money? But my kids know that they've been blessed to bless other people, and they've gotten a lot of this through education and through learning and through books. So it's so interesting, even talking about success and having role models. You, amongst all of us, was one of the first people. I said you was, and you're a teacher. You were one of the first people to own your own home. God, I was so proud of you.
Right.
I was actually a little bit older. The only reason I know that is because I had my daughter, and we were living in an apartment, and I wanted her to have a backyard. I wanted her to live on a block where she can forge relationships. I wanted her to be able to go outside without me, keeping an eye on her. Right? You could just open the door and go in the backyard, because I got a fence. I got a gate. I got a gate that right? So I felt secure enough for her to go out. And she made my life better, because without her, I wouldn't have been thinking about buying a house. I know it for a fact. I would have just been happy in my apartment.
Right.
Now, I was happy in my apartment because it wasn't the projects.
Right.
Now, check this out, though. I moved to another part of Queens. So the day I was moving out of my mother's apartment in the projects, my aunt was there, my mother's younger sister. So she says, "Oh, where you moving to?" I said, "Well, I'm moving to Rego Park." She says to me, "Oh, you think you're too good to live in the projects?"
No, she didn't.
She did. I didn't answer her.
Too good to live in the projects.
And in my head, I was thinking, but why would I want to live in a place where I have to dodge bullets? I can't get in the elevator because it's full of pee. I see crack vials everywhere.
Yep.
The people upstairs, the thing is always leaking down a...
Right.
There's always... I didn't...
I don't have to stay here. I can venture out.
Right. It was very baffling to me that she would say that. But then I realized that she didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. She didn't know better.
You know, this is bringing tears to my eyes, actually, because I can live those conversations. And I'm sorry. But, you know, this is all social reproduction, right? We are educated and socialized to reproduce the communities that we've come from. And whose fault is it, right? I mean, even our parents didn't know any better. And you got to know, and I don't know how much you guys, I'm in healthcare, so I do a lot of social studies. But going to the projects was a step up for our community, right? People who moved from the South, and all our parents came from the South. The people who moved from the South, when you moved into the urban areas, they were living in substandard housing, right? The landlords would evict them, not give them water, and they give them heat, and there was no regulations. So going into public housing gave them a standard, where there was bedrooms, there was bathrooms, there was running water, electricity. A lot of that was included. But we got into the cycle of being like in a fishbowl. And we continue to reproduce the societies that we came out of, right? So when we graduated from New York City public schools, you know, the graduation rate was 37%.
I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
Wow.
No idea.
At 4 years of high school, only 37% of us in our age range was graduating.
I would not have known that.
That's really,
because
really
I
low.
thought that everyone was going to high school and graduating. There was never a thought of someone not completing high school. Never a thought
Think
for me.
about it. Did you have friends who dropped out?
I honestly don't remember a lot of them that may have dropped out.
Funny enough, I didn't have any friends in high school because I had you guys. So I didn't have, and I've never
I wasn't
been
privy to that information or to that side of it, I should say.
And I did this because I know it's because I studied, right? But when I heard the words social reproduction, it stabbed my chest. And it was so painful for me. I know I shared it with some of you guys. Because what it says is that we've been socialized through our education, through our living environments, through our employment. And it's called social capital, which means how we interact with our teachers and people around us, right? Cultural capital, where people who look like us, case in point, I work with this physician who's from Iran. And I said to him, I said, hey, well, what are your kids going to do when they go to college? And he says, I'm an immigrant. He said, my kids will only become doctors, lawyers, and engineers. That's it.
No other choices.
No other choices. Yeah. But see, for us, growing up in an environment where our people who did work, they were housekeepers, they were, factory workers, they were not on the higher end of the social economic
They were blue collar workers.
We were blue collar workers. And that's those of us who work. I mean, you're looking at the rate of unemployment in our communities are so high. It's probably twice the national average. And people are unemployed and underemployed, and we reproduce this in our same societies.
Right.
And even as an educator, right? I don't know how it works for you, but how many of your parents are in a position to help their kids and teach their kids, homework and reinforce it because they're working? Or because they have to work two jobs or work overtime just to sustain themselves. That's a reproductive cycle that keeps us stuck.
Right. That's interesting. Right. How many people do you see when you're amongst the kids? Like their parents, are the parents involved nowadays? Are they pushing education?
See, where I actually work is like where we grew up.
Okay.
It's the same type of environment. So all you got to do is fast forward that like 30 years.
Okay.
It's the same situation.
Wow. So it hasn't changed. It's like at a standstill from when we started.
Right, because if you don't, for me personally, I know that I was the one to break the generational curse.
It's a curse.
For my family, which means me and my brother, right?
Right.
So he watched me. I don't know who I watched because nobody in my family had ever been to college. I was the only one who went to college and graduated successfully early, I might add.
Right. Okay.
I graduated early. So my brother, he was watching me.
Yep.
And he followed in my footsteps. Now, let's be clear. That boy, because boys are different.
Very different.
He graduated by the skin of his teeth.
But he did it. The bottom line is that he did it, though.
By the skin of his teeth so bad that I had to get him into a community college because he didn't even qualify. And I made him, literally, I made him leave like I did. And he went upstate. I drove him. I packed.
Big difference.
Big difference,
right? Big difference.
I bought him a suitcase.
Right.
You need us to pause, Kayla?
Right.
Bought him a suitcase.
Right.
And took him and was like, "Yeah, you're gonna do this.
You're going."
And he did it. And he transferred to a 4-year.
Right.
And now both him and I have our master's degree.
Wow, that's what I'm talking about.
So I have 2 girls. He has 2 girls. He is married. I am not. He's been married for a long time. I was married. That's a whole nother story.
Right.
But I have a 27-year-old. She is an educator like her mom.
Right.
And she has her bachelor's degree and her master's degree as well. My youngest girl, she just graduated high school.
Right.
And she's something else. she is in Fordham and she's studying physics.
Wow.
Now let me tell you this. I didn't even know physics was a field of study. I thought it was a class.
Right.
You know, and my brother's children, my oldest niece, she's going to school to be an educator.
Wow.
But she's on scholarship at her college for volleyball. She's like a volleyball queen.
Right.
He has a little one. She's 13. And she plays volleyball better than her sister. Yeah. So my brother and my sister-in-law, you know, they these parents. They go over.
That's right.
They go
You have to be involved. You
right?
have to. Involvement is key.
So I know for a fact that I did that. And because of my home situation, I pretty much raised my brother.
Yep.
And so he does to this day.
Yep.
He does what I say because I never say a lot. I don't say things a lot.
Right.
Like do this or not. But when I say something,
when EF hadn't talked,
right.
He's gonna listen.
Right.
Because I've never been, even with my own children, I'm never like do this, do that. I want, for me, success has nothing to do with finances. For me.
But they learned from you. They learned from whatever you had achieved in life. They were looking to say, man, look at mom. She's doing it. Right. So that's important. And for me, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
But for me, with education, it started when I went into my mother's bedroom while she was gone at work. And I happened to I opened up her folder. She was going to college.
You didn't know your mom was going to college?
I knew she was going to college, but I was just being nosy. I'm like, what are these folders? So I opened up one of her folders. And she had an A in one of the tests. I looked at another paper. She had an A. Another one, she had an A. And I'm like, oh my goodness. She's a single parent with 3 kids, 2 of them being boys, so they were knuckleheads. And she was working full time and going to school part-time, and she's bringing home A's. And I'm like, if she can do this as a single parent with 3 kids, then I need to take this and I need to finish this race. I'm going to run this race of education.
I remember when we found those grades.
Right.
We were in high school back then.
Yes.
And it was so funny. I'm like, you tell it? To me, getting out of school, I was smart, right? So getting a B was cool.
Right. It was like she had A's.
Shoot, Miss Helen's doing it.
Yes.
So, and it's so interesting when you talk about school and talk about generational wealth, because again, my dad was a functional illiterate because my father was a laborer. My father knew he had to work. He had to feed us. He had to pay our bills. And so my father taught me, ingrained in me from very early on,
work.
Always pay your bills and always work.
Right.
So for my kids, my husband and I knew, my husband is from Jamaica and he knew the struggle too, but we knew that education was it. There were no ways out except through education, not through any, what you look on the outside. What matters is what's in here, because people can't take that from you.
Never take away education.
My kids, from day one, from the day they could talk, all they heard was after college. After college. No, after college. Life starts after college. Travel starts after college. Jobs, everything was after college. And then my youngest, she was washing dishes one day when she was in middle school. And she says, Mom, Mary said she's not going to college. I didn't think that was an option. And my husband and I, we said, we don't know about Mary's house, but you're going to college. And each of my kids took them 5 years. My girls, again, smarter than the boy, both of my girls got out with 2 bachelor's degrees.
Well, it's very interesting because I never said anything to my kids about college. Never said anything to my girls about college.
But they were watching you, though. They saw the success that you had.
And then, let me not really throw their dads under the bus. The oldest girl, her dad, he has 2 master's degrees. And the youngest girl, her dad has 2 master's degrees.
Wow.
So
she's been surrounded with it.
Yeah, so I never thought that they weren't going to college. It wasn't an option not to go, but it was never a question to them if they were going. Right. And so I think that sometimes it's just like the generational curse. Your parents lived in projects, so you're gonna live in a project. I think if you have this kind of environment, then it's just, I'm going to college.
I'm going to follow them in line.
I guess I don't really know.
But social reproduction isn't always negative. It's negative for communities, and I got to say this, a lot of communities of color, because we're socialized to think that there is no outs. But if you're socialized in an environment, like I said with my friend, where you have nepotism and cronyism, where your father's a doctor, so he brings you into the office when you're 10, and you sit behind a desk and you see how things maneuver. Or you go into his friend who has a lab, or his friend who owns his career, has this industry. They own things, and your child knows automatically that they're going. So social reproduction doesn't have to be negative, but like cultural linguistics, where you talk a language and you say words like when I went into anesthesia, it was a whole new world for me. When I was in New York City and I worked in the New York City hospitals, the doctors were Black, the nurses were Black. Housekeeping was Black. When I got my first master's degree and I moved into anesthesia is 98% white. Right. Maybe 93% because there's other cultures in there, but it's 90% white. I was in culture shock. Here I am. I went to community college, right? Because I didn't have an option. You got up, packed a bag, and went. I knew no one was going to support me because no one could afford to give me $50 a month. So I went to community college. After that, I went to state college, and I still stayed home. I still was a commuter because I had to work full time. After that, I was getting married, and my husband said, you can go get your graduate degree. I'll take care of our son. So I had that support from them, but I never knew, one, that I was going to be successful because I didn't know what success was, right? And then 2, when I hit the world of anesthesia and I hit the world of upper class white America, I hit imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome for me, my dad was a housekeeper. So imposter syndrome for me, I was paralyzed. It wasn't outward, people couldn't see it, but I didn't know the conversation as they were having. Linguistic capital, I didn't have any. I didn't know how to speak in 5 and 6, words with all of these different syllables. Right. I didn't know what they were talking about. Right. I didn't know they were all Hopkins and Georgetown and Harvard graduates. I was from community college in New York, so I didn't have any of that. Socially, I didn't know that this is the fork you use. This is where you should live. I didn't know how to own a home. I didn't know how to be a part of a multiple family household. I didn't know about even being a part of community settings and volunteering. I had to learn that as a 30-year-old adult.
It's so interesting because the steps that you're describing, you would never conceptualize on such that level. See, for me, it would be like, oh yeah, let's go do this. But what you're saying is, with you having to see this and go through all of those steps with people and understanding the language. Wow.
And
now,
alone.
right.
I didn't have you guys.
Right.
Because first of all, you guys were having your own families and you guys were not living with me. You were in the military in another country.
Yep.
You were in New York City and I'm here by myself in the South and I didn't have any supports.
Right.
I was raising my kids and you lived 200 miles from me.
Right.
But when I raised my kids and you didn't have any children at the time, I would have to call you to come get my kids from daycare so that I can go to work.
Right.
Because I was a nuclear family. I had no support.
Right.
I didn't have it.
That's so interesting, especially when you break it down, because it really makes you think about all of the minute steps that you had to take to get to where you were. Yeah. That's a nice breakdown.
You may not have sensed
very nice breakdown.
You weren't by yourself. You still stayed in a community of color, community of support, and you could reach out and touch Edie and Edie's kids.
Yep. Right.
I didn't have anyone.
Yep. Right.
I mean, I had Nellie and Liz who lived in an hour away from me, but they were doing their thing too. They were working. They had their families. We were getting our grind on.
Yeah.
And I felt so alone for so many years because I can talk superficially. Oh, that's so nice. And people, I wasn't pretending, but I didn't know. I didn't have the support. I had the support at church.
Right.
But it was a different facet for me.
Yeah, and I never experienced that because of my profession. You know what I mean? Like it's a different level, and you know, you and I are very different. You
both good. Do you?
You said I can't curse. For me, I probably would have walled myself off because I'm good at that.
Right.
I would go to work and do my job and get out.
Right.
Like I wouldn't even try to interact or like, and I'm like this. If you don't want me, I don't want you. Even if I want you and you don't want me, you never gonna know I want you. Never. I don't care who you are. I'm just not doing it. And I like to say I'm my mother's child because she was a hard lady. Like on the outside, she was a hard lady. Like she wasn't taking no shorts from nobody. Right. No matter what was going on in the inside of her. And I think I developed that. And again, for me, you know, because of my profession, I'm not going, there's no levels, I'm never trying to be a principal. That's not my thing. I'm not trying to be the boss of nobody. I'm not trying to do any of that. So I never have to interact with anybody as long as I'm doing my job. It doesn't depend on anyone else.
People didn't necessarily exclude me, they just didn't include me. Right? And maybe I said, but you can't function like that. Being walled off, you're not insulating yourself. You're doing it because, first of all, living in an urban environment, you're taught that opening yourself up, being vulnerable, you can be victimized. Right. So we know that being in an urban environment,
protection of yourself.
But because I didn't know the social, I don't know the word. Socially, I wasn't in. They weren't saying, "Oh, Paula can't hang out."
Socially in tune with them. Right.
And also, because I didn't have the exposure, the comfort level wasn't there. Like my husband went to a PWI. He went to a predominantly white institution. He's an engineer. He's very comfortable having those conversations. Where with me, I didn't have the exposure.
Right. And I think it's, again, where you grew up. Because like you're saying, we grew up in a time and around people where you had to hold things in. You couldn't expose whatever was going on with you or for you to everyone. So in order to protect yourself, you're like, I'm not going to reveal this. I'm not going to reveal that. So, and with you, just with him socializing, he's open. He didn't know that world of having to be discreet. He didn't know that. All he knew was, why not? Let's just talk.
That's true.
So a lot of that is growing up, where you grew up and how you grew up. But I know for me, being discreet is all me. Everybody knows I am ironclad. If you tell me you don't want somebody to know something, no one will know.
Snitches get
That's
stitches.
what.
Absolutely.
You know,
Right.
I'm serious. This is how I grew up. So growing up in Brooklyn in the 70s, there was none of that, reveal this, reveal that. No, you keep your mouth shut. You know,
Right.
there was
Yep.
none of that.
Yes.
Like my mother and my grandmother used to say, whatever goes on in this house stays in this house. So I grew up with that as a mentality. I keep that. It went on in this house. Nobody else outside the house needs to know that. So that was one of the things, again, being discreet and holding it in. Whereas other people who grew up in the South and things like that, I don't think they were. I don't think they were socialized for that. Oh, I agree.
Because
I agree.
sometimes sharing the communication would lessen the wealth gap, right? And it lessens the glass ceiling for women and for Black women. But it also says, oh, you're making $100,000 and they're paying me $75,000 for the same job, but you don't know that because we don't talk.
Right.
But I want to move now.
Right.
I want to talk two things. I want to say really quickly what you would say to your younger self. And then I want to move to money. So if you could sit there, and I'm going to talk to Paula, right? Because when I lived in Section 8 housing in Far Rockaway, Queens, and I would lay on my bed, right? And I would wish and pray that I had that quarter that I spent last week on potato chips because now I was hungry, right? I wish, and I remember thinking, and I remember telling myself, when I grow up, I'm going to always have money in my drawer. So if somebody needs money, I'm going to be in a position to share. I remember that. And to this day, and that's why wealth and being out of debt is so important to me, because I know the potential for loss is great if we don't manage our money. So for me, the zeros are not as important as me having the freedom to manage my own. So if you can talk to the younger Michelle, seeing what she was back then, being frail and vulnerable and not having, the success that you have now, what would you say to Michelle?
This is a very interesting topic because, I have no regrets. I would not change anything about my life, nothing. Even the traumas, even just, I really wouldn't, because I definitely feel as though the struggles and the traumas that I've been through emotionally, financially, psychologically, all of those things have made me who I am today. And I love this girl. Like, I love her. And so I'm not one to regret anything. Even getting married to the wrong man and having to go in my 401k to get a divorce. Right? So that set me back a little. I wouldn't change that either.
Right.
Because if you're self-aware, as you go through these challenges, and I never say bad times, you go through these challenges, if you're self-aware, you learn and you grow.
Yep.
So me, what would I say to my younger self? Drag that garbage bag to the
Yes.
Do it. Don't change it.
Right.
Do it.
Right. That's so important, because as you were asking this question, I'm sitting and I'm thinking, and I'm going to echo exactly what you're saying. Honestly, while I'm young Lisa, as I'm growing up in the projects and seeing all of the negativity that I did see growing up, I wouldn't change a thing. I enjoyed being in Red Hook projects, living with my grandmother and walking. We would walk hand to hand, seemed like 20 blocks to get to Smith and 9th Street train station. But in that walk that we took, She was talking to me. She was educating me and just spending that quality time that I miss. And that was good stuff to me. And we were so comfortable doing what we were doing in the project, surviving. I never experienced the hunger. So there was always food in the refrigerator, food in the pantry, in the refrigerator. We didn't want I had Kool-Aid.
Now, I'm still trying to get over this girl that said pantry. You have a pantry?
You know, when I built my first house, I went to my first house. Nellie said, "Oh, you got a big pantry." I was like,
"It's a pantry." It's a pantry.
What's a pantry? I know.
What are you guys talking about? I grew up in Brooklyn.
A pantry?
Okay, cabinet. So I say all of that to say that my younger self, I had the experience of family. Every Sunday, we had dinner at my grandmother's house. Everyone came over, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins. Right, Paula. We would sit there every Sunday. We had dinner. So we had a sense of family, a sense of communication, a sense of togetherness and love. And it was unfortunate that I noticed after my grandmother passed is when we didn't do that again. So now I'm starting to see the separation of family. Now I'm starting to see where education matters. Because with everybody going apart and doing their own thing, now like you said, you left there like, okay, now what? Now I'm here and now what? So what would I say to my younger self? I would say keep going. Because once you keep going, you keep growing. And my dad, again, he was like a traveler. Every summer, I would go down to Miami to spend time with my grandparents. They had a big, beautiful house. They had an orange tree in the backyard on the right-hand side. There was a mango tree. There was hot peppers in the backyard. I mean, I had that experience. Wow. So for me, seeing my grandparents who are married and seeing married people interact, and now they have 2 cars, they have this, I'm like, wow, what is this? And I enjoyed that. And again, with the sense of travel and a sense of family and togetherness and spending time and talking, that I'm like, there is a bigger and better world than just being in the projects in Brooklyn.
So it's exposure.
Exposure is the key. You have to not just educate, but you have to expose all of your as many as you can, especially your children, to different parts of the world, different parts of even inside the United States. It's okay to travel to California. It's okay to travel to Utah, wherever you want to go. Don't limit yourself to that. And for me, and being able to share that with other people, and especially with my son, that helps. That helps to take the burden away and understanding that I don't have to stay right here.
So it's interesting because that's not an African American problem. Less than 50% of Americans travel more than 100 miles outside of their home. So I want to talk right now really briefly about the wealth gap. Because African Americans, we're still the lowest on the rung of the wealth gap. African Americans about 40%, white Americans 45%, Hispanic Americans, African Americans about 40%, Hispanic Americans 45%, white Americans 60%, and the wealthiest of us all are Asian Americans, and largely because they have very little debt. Because, being immigrants or being second generational immigrants, their parents are constantly working so that their kids don't have to take on that amount of debt. And then I've traveled to Asia, and I've traveled to Asia with you. And when we go on vacation, we don't just sit on a bus and have somebody serve us drinks. we talk and we get to learn the culture. And I remember when we were in Korea and there was the tour guide and she was telling me about how her son was having a child with his wife and they lived with them. And I remember saying to her, oh, are they saving their money to buy their own house? And she looked at me insulted. And as if to say, why would they move out?
Right.
Because it's generational and they covet that relationship and they build each other up. So let's talk about how do we change the wealth gap for people of color? How do we make them understand the value of finances?
That's a very good question. And that's something that we need to start from when they're very young to teach them. You don't need a credit card in order to sustain your life. You need a credit card for socialization, for renting a car and things like that. But let's not get a credit card and think that we can go out and spend a whole bunch of money. Well, for me, as example, when I was in college, back in the day, these credit card companies were able to come on campus and introduce this to all of the college students. So, of course, you fill out the application. You instantly get a credit card. So I filled out the application. I had no idea about credit cards, anything, how anything worked. I was able to get an American Express credit card. Back in the day, American Express credit card, once you got that bill, you had to pay everything.
Yep.
So, right. So here I am. I'm like, wow, I have a credit card. It's $200. I got $200. So instantly I went out. I went to VIM. Oh. It was a jeans store.
Yes, VIM, girl, yes.
I got my jeans. I got my top. I think I got some sneakers. And then I remember I asked one of my friends at work, and I asked them, I was like, hey, do you want to go to see a Broadway play? He was like, yeah, let's go. So I bought tickets for us to go to a Broadway play. And I thought I was big time because I'm like, don't worry about it. I got it. Well, lo and behold, that credit card bill comes in. And I look at it and I'm like, what? Balance due? And when? In 28 days? I don't have $200. Well, they're crazy. So I didn't pay it. But however, a couple of months later, a year later, it goes on my credit card bill, on my credit report. And now that I'm going and I'm applying for other credit cards as I get older, I'm like, what is this? They're like non-payment. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And I'm like, oh, that credit card that I got when I was in college. So then I started to learn about credit cards and what it can do to your financial stability. Because if you have that on your credit report, that's going to stifle you. So I'm like, okay, well, I know now that I need to pay these bills as they come in. But other than that, that was my first experience. And I said, I know better.
I didn't, I'm listening to you and I'm trying to figure out how did I know to pay my stuff? Like, I really don't know. Because just like you,
right,
I got 2 credit cards on campus, but I didn't use them.
Right.
You know, I still have a Discover card and a Citibank.
No.
Do you know how much my credit line is on them?
Ooh, wait.
Because they want you to spend.
Right.
But you've always been very cognizant about money.
But I don't know how. I don't know where I learned that.
Right.
I don't know. When I was in high school, I was a business major. And then when I went to college, I was in business. Maybe that's how I knew.
Probably.
Because I'm thinking, like, I never got in trouble with credit card debt. The only time I got in trouble with credit card debt is when I got that first house and I ain't have no money.
Right.
And stuff needed to be fixed.
Right.
And so I now still have the same 2 credit cards.
That's awesome.
Which I don't use.
Right.
Which every year they send me a letter saying, you better use this card, otherwise we're going to close it.
And what do you think? What do you say?
I go to the store and I buy some apples and oranges. And I put it on a credit card and wait for them to contact me again the next year. Because you guys, you know, I got in trouble with credit cards again when I was getting divorced. Right? That is a horror show.
Right.
And so after I cleaned up that debt,
you said that's it.
I'm never using a credit card again.
Right.
I'm not using debit. I'm not using credit. If I don't have the money, I'm not getting it.
Right.
It's king, man.
Right. And I remember you guys used to tease me about using cash all the time. But I just feel like if I want something,
you're going to save up for it.
I save for it. So all the stuff I have, I save for it. So if I'm going to get a new car, which I'm never going to get a new car. I'm never getting a new car, right? But if I want another car, I'm going to save for it and pay cash.
Right.
That's what I do.
Right.
And I've learned how to, that's how I live. That's how I live. And so I know that I need credit. And so I have credit. Right. And so, yeah, I'm at 817.
Ooh, wait.
So, okay. I came into a problem which I definitely wasn't expecting. So my daughter goes to Fordham. Her dad is we're supposed to go half.
Right.
Well, he said, I don't got it. I said, what? I got my half.
You can say a bad word.
No. I said, I have my half.
Right.
So he goes on to say, I said, well, you could take a loan. He goes, well, how am I going to take a loan? I still owe my loans from college. This man is my age. He's been out of college for 20 years.
It's not unreal.
So, and I was like, no, they'll, I said, the federal government will give you a loan.
Absolutely. They are not going to turn you down.
I said, the federal government will give you, now I'm not taking a loan from the federal government. I don't need that plan. I don't need the federal government. But turns out, because I feel so strongly about supporting my kids in college because of my experience, and I want them to go where they want to go, I took out a loan, But because my credit is so good, I was able to take $30,000 out, ready for this, at 3.34%.
Nice. My girl.
And so this means, but with a private company.
8%.
Right, with private. Federal, I was like, because I know how to read.
Right.
And so I was doing my research.
Don't read.
I was doing my research. But because the federal government will give anybody money for school, they charge you 8%, 9%, 10%, 11%. And I was like, oh, y'all don't know who y'all messing with. No, I will get my loans from private companies. Now, this is the other thing I had did, because I forgot. I put a freeze on all my stuff years ago. Because I'm not getting no credit cards. I'm not looking for no loans for cars or homes. So
You're done.
I put a freeze.
Yeah.
So they came back and it was like, we can't access your... I was like, oh, let me take this off.
Right. And that's a good point too, the freezing. Once you get to that point where you're comfortable, you have what you need to freeze it.
Right, because I didn't foresee me. I don't need a loan for nothing.
But it also prevents credit card fraud. Which is important. So I remember about 5 years ago, or whatever it was, you were doing a catch-up plan for your retirement. As an educator, I guess you wanted to buy some years, because I'm looking to retire soon, and I always talk to my the people that I deal with on social media, talk about the steps of retirement. Pensions, IRAs, Social Security, and independent cash. And as an educator, I remember you talking about, and you and I talk about, 401k,
right?
But you were able to catch up on your pension.
So what ended up happening is, so at that point, I think I was an educator for like 20 something years. And somehow I lost, no. I don't remember. Anyway, somehow I lost 2 years in the system, which would put me, instead of retiring in 2028, I would have to retire in 2030.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. What I didn't realize is that they just don't, like, here's your 2 years back. It was 2.5 years. They were like, oh yeah, you want these years back? Oh, you got to give us money.
Wow. And what's that called? What is that?
I actually don't know. I can't remember at all.
Okay.
But she's buying back into her pension.
Right.
So that she will have those good, in the military, you have what's called good years. You have military experience.
Right.
Good years so you can retire and get X amount of dollars.
So what I did, it was, because I had been in the system for so long, it was a lot of money to pay to buy it back.
Oh.
It was a lot of money. It was like $18,000.
Wow.
I was like, I don't have this money, but I need to get out of this system. I don't want to have all my years or whatever. So what I ended up doing was I ended up refinancing my home.
Okay.
So now I'm back in with my home, but I got a nice, because I had so much equity. Of
course, it's worth it.
I had so much equity in my home that I was able to get the money. I wrote them a check and was like, give me my time back. But that's going to pay me for the rest of my life. So that it was like an $18,000 investment.
Right. So, but look how much you got back from that $18,000 investment.
Right. Yes. So I have my pension. And my pension is going to be 60% of my salary. I have my 401k is down because I had to
do whatever,
take it out for the divorce. And what people need to know is when you take money out from your 401k, you get penalties. And on top of that, they add, so let's say I took $18,000. They add that to my salary for the year, which then makes my tax bracket go up.
Okay.
But I figured it all out, all that straightened out. So I have the pension, I have a little tiny 401k, but educators have something called a 403B.
Yes, it's not,
So I will say that the only reason I got the 403B is because when I retire, if I have days left, like I don't go out sick. I have like 253 sick days. So when you have days left, they pay you.
Right.
But they only put it in your 403B. They don't give you a check. First, I was like, oh, I'm going to get a big check. But no. So I was like, oh, no, they're not keeping my money.
Right.
So I opened a 403B maybe about 5 years ago, and I put money in that. So it's growing nicely or whatever. So, in my head, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have more money when I'm retired than I do now.
Right.
Because about 10 years ago, I made a conscious decision because I
make a change.
I wanted. I knew the time was coming, and I am not a last minute person. So I started getting all my affairs in order. So as of right now, as of this moment, I have my home to care for, and unfortunately, I have my daughter's loan that I took out, but I'm paying that now. Right. I'm paying that now.
Right.
You're not gonna catch me 4 years and now this $30,000 is $129,000. No, thank you.
Right.
So and when I called them, they're like, you want to pay this now?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if you pay this now, then I was like, no, I will. And this is the other thing I do, because I don't like people just being in my account. So I have I don't want to call it a fake debit card, but I have this debit card where I just put money in it to pay for airlines, to pay for cruises. So when I told them that I was going to use a debit card to pay, they charged me a fee of $40. But for me,
$40 per payment that you make?
Per payment?
Yes.
Oh, no, you can do something different.
No.
But we'll talk offline, but you can do online bill pay from your bank. Let your bank send them a check at no cost. Online bill pay comes directly from, they have no access. No one goes into my account to take my money. I don't do that. But online bill pay, girl, it's amazing.
Okay,
and there's no expense and there's no fees. And if they will even mail the check and keep a record for you for 3 years at no cost.
That's interesting.
I need to write that down because
every bank does it.
Because again, I'm paranoid, and
right.
I just so I rather just put the money in there when they
same deal.
So November 7th, they take their payment. November 7th. 5 a.m. I put the money in that fake account.
Right.
So if anybody get a hold of it, well, you just getting that.
Yes.
You're not getting my real money.
Right. You get the play money. Right.
That's the urban hustle.
Right. I love it.
How does retirement look for you? Because I know you're a world traveler, and I've traveled the world with you. And I'm thankful because you've given me and my children an airline ticket for like 10 years. To go anywhere around the world. My girls have been to Greece, and I've never been to Greece.
I've never been to Greece.
But because of you, I'm so surprised.
I know, me too. Okay. So retirement, and I call you up so often and ask you so many questions. I'm like, Paula, okay, what does this mean? And what do I do with this? What 401k, Roth 401k, IRA 401k. And Paula gives me really good information. But for me, at my job, I am fortunate enough to my job provides 5.5% of whatever I add into my they match it. Whatever I put into my 401k. So with us talking about it years ago, I started my 401k when I first started working. Yay. So even though I was putting a small amount, maybe I was putting 2%, 3%, whatever it was, I started putting it in because we were talking about finances years ago. So, and you were like, put it away. If you don't see it, you're not going to spend it. I'm like, no, Paul, I'll just have a separate savings account. You're like, no. Put it away. You don't see it. You don't spend it. So I started that. And I'm like, this is a good way to start. I like this. I don't look at it often because it goes up and down and I would have a heart attack once I see how much the loss is.
But I remember the year. I made 13%. And I'm like, yay! Woo! I got 13% in my 401k. Right. And you got like 18%.
I did.
Yes!
Almost 19% was my return. And I was like, Paula, what? This is... And you're like, what? I could not believe it. I was so ecstatic. And I was like, this is a good thing. And I remember showing my son because I was so proud. I'm like, wow, this is 6 figures. What is happening? So I'm like, come here, Steph, look at this. And he's like, okay, Mom. And I'm like, I can't. He's not there yet. He was maybe 11 or 12. He didn't understand. But for me, to say that I have saved up 6 figures, this is amazing. And I couldn't share that with a lot of my family members.
That's right.
0 family members.
You know what? You're right. I said a lot. 0 family members. But I did share it with Paula. Right. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Well, and you're like, just keep going. And just whatever you do, never stop contributing to your 401k. And fast forward, so now I'm at this point where I'm ready to begin my generational wealth, and I'm starting at an older age. However, I'm doing it. So I did pull from my 401k to purchase my house. But I do know that going forward, this is an investment because you touched upon it. It's okay to spend money to make money. So I know this is a positive investment going forward.
What are you making him do in terms of his retirement money?
So my son is now working, and he's got a good job. It pays well, and he is now investing in his 401k. And where he works, he's now buying stock options from his company.
Yeah.
So he is 20 years old, and he is already beginning his nest egg.
And that's because
that's
you.
Amazing.
And with my daughter, I told her, I was like, you need to make sure you get in New York City, it's a TRS.
Right.
You need to do this right now. Now, I'm not very good at picking whatever, so that's what her father's for. He's been my financial person since the beginning, and so I told her, make sure you do this, but call your father, send him all your papers. To this day, when I got my 403B, we have not been together in a gazillion years. I sat with the financial person at Voya, and I called him on the phone, and was like, here. Tell them what to do, because I don't know. Right. I mean, I've just been blessed that way to be able to have someone I trust who will just do it. He does oversee. He has all of my. Actually, he set up the online whatever. I don't. He just.
She's like, I don't know the words, the terminologies, whatever it is, it's there.
I trust him, and I know that he only wants the best for me.
Of course.
You handle that, bro. Handle it.
Right.
Ladies, this has been amazing. This is what we do all the time, whether it's on phone or it's on Zoom.
It is.
We celebrate each other. We celebrate our wins. We are there to cry on each other's shoulders. We support our children, and our children are not as close because we're all across the regions, but we celebrate all of the triumphs. And I wanted to bring this to the viewers because we are success. When you put that banner there and put the definition in the dictionary, you see us because we're continuing on our success journey. And my success means that I can leave a legacy behind for the viewers, for the American people, because what I endured growing up and the lack that I have, and now that I have the knowledge, I want to impart the knowledge to others, and having them see the success and the wealth that I have in my friendships. People need to know that, because you grow stronger together. And my very last question to you guys is, where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now?
Interesting question. For me, 5 to 10 years from now, I really hope to be at a point of relaxation, because I can feel myself coasting there now, but I really want to have total peace of mind. I want to be able to just do whatever I want to do. I'm not in debt. My only debt will be my house payment. Again, the car paid off, no credit card debt, no additional craziness. I'm not going out to do crazy spending on clothes. That's not my idea of happiness and or relaxation. I just see myself traveling all around the world.
I love it.
At very little expense, but just happy. And no debt at all. Debt is not the way to go. Financial freedom and having cash at hand is the best thing in the whole wide world. If anything, that's the most important thing to pass along, financial freedom. And you and Paul are the biggest examples of that. Huge.
Michelle, where are we 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, first of all, we retired. Unless I want to be greedy. If I stay, every year that I stay at my job after the 30 years, I get a 1.5% increase in my pension.
Girl.
So we'll see. Right.
Baby steps.
But choice.
But it'll be my choice. And for my whole life, I've been taking care of people. So unlike you guys, you've been traveling, and I've never really had the luxury to just do me and travel. So for me, and you talked about traveling around the United States. One of my first things is I'm going to rent an RV.
Good for you.
And I have a book.
No way.
With all of these places that I want to go. Like in the different states.
Do it.
One of my ideas was to be a customer service agent at an airline.
Right.
So keep a bag packed in my trunk.
Right.
And go.
Right.
Like I'm just, and I'm really now, I am so peaceful.
Yep.
And I'm very, very happy now. Like I feel free. I feel like I don't have any burdens, even with the fact that I'm paying for my daughter's college. Like a lot of people were very upset about that, but I was like, you know what?
I got a golden mind.
But they were upset that you were paying for your daughter's college?
No, upset that I had to pay it all myself.
Oh.
You know, upset that I had to pay it all myself. Because originally, of course,
it was supposed to be half and half.
I was like, woo, I was freaking out. But then I remember God always takes care of me. And let's be clear.
Yep.
I am making more money now than I've ever made. Because miraculously, they have all these after school programs.
Right.
I have all of this tutoring that I'm doing. And I'm like, so God knew what was in store.
Yep.
Like, and that's what.
Don't be afraid.
That's what calm.
Yep.
I was like,
don't be afraid.
God is.
Just breathe. Just breathe.
Don't leave me.
Just
Don't leave me.
breathe.
I was like, look at them. And I am, and you know, it's hard for me because it definitely sounds like a lot of money. But in addition to all of my regular home bills and maintenance
Expenses.
yeah, I am comfortably paying $1,800 a month for my daughter's tuition.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
And it's because I'm getting all of this extra work.
Yep.
Like seamlessly.
Yep.
You know?
It's just coming. So you were worried about where is this going to come from?
But my God got me.
And now it's just flowing.
It is.
It's overflowing. I love it.
And
I love it.
Who has $1,800?
Love it.
And for me,
I love it. I
5
love
to 10
it.
years from now, I want to be traveling the circuit, and I want to be teaching people that debt is a disease, and I want to help them incrementally cure the disease of debt. So retired from anesthesia, and then also I want to be a really good grandmother.
Oh.
I say a good grandmother. As soon as my grandchildren are born, I want to start their 529 plan.
Yep.
I want to be there, and I think generationally, because a lot of grandmothers in our communities are still working, they're like what you and Miss Annie had. You're losing that connectivity. You're losing that. But kids are feeding themselves. They're latchkey kids. They're educating themselves. They're doing their own homework or not. I want to be that grandmother who reads the book. I want to have every Wednesday to be my day. That is my success, and that is my wealth. And I can't thank you ladies enough.
Thank you.
You are blessed. God has so abundantly blessed us.
Yes.
And this is only our beginning.
Yes.
So
yes.
You guys,
this is a good conversation.
Thank
you. Right. Thank you for having us.
You guys have just taken a sneak peek into how we talk in our cars, how we talk at the breakfast table, how we talk when we're on Zoom. And it's not just the 3 of us. There's 9 of us. And we love each other, not including our husbands or our significant others or our kids, but we honestly love each other.
Yes.
And there is no animosity, angst, jealousy. We want the best for each other. And I wanted you guys to see this is wealth. Educationally, academically, financially, socially, culturally, we're building this together.
Yes.
And I want to thank you guys. This is your girl, Paula. I love you. Keep watching, keep jamming, and I promise you, you'll get more of this.
It's the Queen from Queens. Money minutes matter. Da, 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 da.